Everyone. I hope you're doing okay because today we're going to talk about Hamas, a terrorist group based in the Middle East, more specifically in the Gaza Strip, and with some members in the West Bank. This organization has been active since 1987 and has been trying to rebuild a Palestinian state in their historic territory.
In December 1987, a popular Palestinian uprising called the Intifada against Israeli occupation erupted in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank. Before this uprising, the Palestinian Muslim Brotherhood decided to transform itself within this movement by establishing Hamas as an adjunct organization with a specific mission of confronting Israeli occupation of the historic region of Palestine, which comprises of the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and Israel. This because Hamas wants to create a sovereign Palestinian state. The official date of creation of Hamas was on the 14th of December of 1987, days after the First Intifada, and their charter is dated from August of 1988. Hamas started as an anti-Semitic organization, as can be seen in their original charter. In the 2017 charter, the group changed its language, which made the charter a little less aggressive against the Jews as a nation. Their first attack was in 1989 and resulted in the abduction and killing of two Israeli soldiers. In 2006, Hamas won the Palestinian legislative election with 76 of the 133 seats of the Palestinian Legislative Council. And from that point forward, they took control of the Gaza Strip, which rose the tension between Hamas and Fatah, which is another political and military organization from Palestine, leading to a fight in June 2007, which ended in the expulsion of Fatah officials from the Gaza Strip to the West Bank. After Fatah's expulsion, there was a new government created in the West Bank called Palestine Authority. In 2011, Fatah and Hamas reached an agreement to form an interim government to organize legislative and presidential elections. In 2012, the two groups announced that they had selected Mahmoud Abbas as the interim president. In 2017, Hamas renewed their 1988 charter in an attempt to soften their image by no longer calling for the destruction of Israel, but still calling for the liberation of Palestine. This new charter confirms the acceptance of the 1967 orders as the basis for the establishment of a Palestinian state.
Moving on, we're going to talk about some strengths about this organization. One of Hamas' biggest strengths is the ability to carry out complex military operations with their arsenal of light automatic weapons and homemade rockets. The group also has weapon production capabilities, even though these capabilities have been diminished by Israeli operations. They still have the means to produce weapons at a slower rate. There's also a Hamas Turkey relation, which were discovered in 2018 by the Israeli Security Agency due to a large influx of cash for Hamas via Turkey. We view this as a strength because it provides Hamas with a safe haven and a place to plan operations from, without having to deal with the restrictions of the Israeli government. Adding on to this, there's also a relation between Hamas and Qatar. This relation in particular is viewed as a strategy by Qatar to eliminate every possible threat against their nation. In this relationship, it goes from providing refuge to the leaders of Hamas all the way to giving money to the group and to aid the Gaza Strip in reconstruction efforts. A relationship that provides Hamas with hundreds of millions of dollars. Now we're going to talk about the weaknesses about Hamas. Probably their biggest weakness is the rejection factions that have been rising in Palestine. Factions that have little confidence for Hamas government. Little confidence comes from a problem of Hamas political efforts, given that they don't have much credibility and if they keep turning a blind eye to civilian attacks. This credibility could be even less to the point that they will not be able to maintain power. Levy 2018. You could also see Hamas' position in the power balance against Israel as a weakness, given that Israel has a much larger military and intelligence power than Hamas, ranging from their own Israeli designed tank to an estimated of 100 to 200 nuclear warheads. Wisconsin Project on Nuclear Arms Control in 1996. This is a huge difference of power that could be the demise of Hamas if it came to an all out war. Very likely, given that Israel is a major non NATO ally which gives the military and financial aid, and Israel is the country that receives the most help from the US. Going on to the opportunities for Hamas. On Friday, June 19th, Hamas called for a third intifada or Palestinian uprising to start. This is because of Israel's plan to annex part of the West Bank. This could be an opportunity because Hamas can use the exaltation on the general public for their benefit and could attract more people in to join them. Since, since it's fresh news, and people may feel like more connected to something that is happening rather than something that happened many years ago, such as the first Intifada that happened in 1987 because of the assassinations of four Israeli workers in a refugee camp by Israel's military. There's also the coronavirus outbreak, which has prompted to encourage a truce, which can be the new beginning of other types of negotiations if it happens. A call for peace. Continuing with the threats, the fact that we are in a global pandemic and Hamas is not taking good care of the health measures due to poor financial state. People don't have the resources to take proper care of the disease and not respecting the curfew because of trying to supply their families with basics for living. And this may be a threat for Hamas since it may leave them with less people for their fighting force. An annexation of a part of the West Bank by Israel. This caused a lot of unrest in Palestine, and for that, Hamas sent a homemade missile to Israel on the 26th of June and was responded by Israeli missiles on the 27th of June. This can be a threat because of Israel's realization which already caused the destruction of various Hamas facilities.
International intervention. We think there should be international intervention from countries that are not biased, unlike the US, who have been intervening for a long time in favor of Israel, or intervention from a supranational organization, such as the UN, who could serve as a mediator for negotiations. This has the pros of intervention by capable states which can see the issue from another perspective, and thus not blinding their judgment because of any type of gain. The con we see is the rejection from certain people who may be afraid that the mediating state won't act in their favor, and people who think it's not in the interest of the mediators to carry out the negotiations. Military actions. The best way to attack Hamas in a military sense would be to try and dismantle their gun supplies and their military branch as a whole. This can be hard, given that there may be some of these facilities in hospitals or schools, which is where a diplomatic agreement could come in handy. And an example of how all of the recommendations we give should be simultaneous or at the very least combining some of them. This could be the step required to bring a peaceful change on the situation. The pro would be an end on the violence from Hamas's side, and the cons would be that in order to bring this peace, there has to be violence, which may result in injuries and even death of civilians. Politics. There should be a change in the political landscape of Palestine, more specifically in the Gaza Strip, which is controlled by Hamas. This because new elections with all political actors from Palestine may bring a more moderate leadership, which can be the big step towards peace. This election may have to be aided by different outside actors because of the corruption in Palestine. A pro is that an election is the way to hear people's voices, and this voice could agree with Hamas or maybe not. A con is that it could be hard to do an election without international intervention or without much budget. Diplomacy. Even if Hamas and Israel weren't very keen to diplomacy with one another, today's context could change that. This was seen a few days ago when Hamas wanted to negotiate in order to have more resources to effectively combat the COVID-19 pandemic. If Hamas capitalizes on this, and with encouragement from outside actors, a start to a new negotiation could be very factible. The biggest pro we see is the possibility of a peaceful ending in the conflict. The con is that it could be opposed by the more conservative people of both sides, who may see negotiations as a sign of weakness. Sanctuaries. Countries like Turkey and Qatar should be put under pressure to end their relation with Hamas, that has been providing their leaders with safe haven. This because it could be seen as a way to help terrorist organizations by said countries, and the denial of sanctuary could be a step towards peace because it would take away an important resource from Hamas, which is the place to plan attacks safely without international intervention. This pressure could come from economic sanctions or the withholding of economic assets or aid for those countries. The pro would be the denial of some things needed to carry out complex operations, which are time, space, and the ability to plan said operations. The con would be the tension between the countries applying the pressure and those receiving it. This because it could be seen as a threat to their sovereignty.